This is A.I.M. 2 Clan Wars. It's a RPG simulation by Skydriver. I vaguely remember A.I.M 2 from my teenage years. It didn't make a lot of sense, but I kept it in mind and found out this year it's on Steam, so I said why not and decided to make a video about it. The game involves gliders, mech mines, has a weird story, it's from Russia, has horrible graphics, and no one really played it in the West. In short, this should be a game covered by Mandalore. But that man has probably enough to do. Before you start, change your music folder in the game directory to music backup. I don't know why, but since then it barely crashed. Before I explain most of the mechanics, let's talk about what you do in A.I.M 2. Most of the time you travel between places, shoot other gliders and make money. Most of the game is about mech mines and money. Those are capitalist mechas. The controls are very weird at the start. You know how in other games you control characters on ice and they have this weird kind of drift? In A.I.M 2 you are not only on ice, but everything in addition to that is covered in oil. Even your vision has this weird momentum. Looking around is kind of hard at the start, but after some hours it's a non-issue. It succeeds in giving you the feel of being a glider. The combat shares the same base with the same problems. Because looking around has momentum, shooting also does. Aiming is really hard in A.I.M 2 ironically. What's helpful is changing to a hit scan weapon early in the game, like the electric discharger. This makes it much easier. In the world of A.I.M there are no humans. They are referred to as the creators, but no one really knows what happened to them. Instead everything is organized by mech mines that operate gliders or facilities. You are part of the latest generation of mech mines, the 5th generation. You are actually the protagonist of A.I.M 1, but it's not necessary to have played A.I.M 1. Super is another mech mind that created many later generations and led the facilities, and you are left with some messages from him. You are supposed to find 13 mech minds of the 5th generation and insert them into his bunker. That is the story. There are some lore tidbits around, but this isn't really a story game, but more of a simulation shooter, RPG and whatever. For niche games, genre mostly become meaningless, and that's the case for A.I.M 2. Giving you buzzwords won't give you the right impression. You can start with one of 3 professions, but neither choice is that important. You can do whatever you want later. What's interesting is that there are different playstyles that are more or less viable. You can be a trader and buy goods from one facility and sell it for profit in another. You can be a courier, give messages to mech mines and do other missions. Or be a warrior and destroy other gliders and take their resources. All of this is represented in a rating system. Rating isn't just an achievement, it does more things. A higher warrior rating makes other gliders run from you instead of firing back. A higher trading rating increases the price when selling and decreases the price when buying goods. Courier rating increases mission rewards. Those 13 mech mines I mentioned earlier need to be convinced, each one differently. Inferion, for example, wants to be beaten enough times to reduce his rating. Tarantok wants you to have a different glider, and so on. It's never really difficult, because all of it is solved by conquering a sector or getting enough money. What is a sector and how do you conquer one? The world is split into different maps that you can traverse via buying a key and then going through the passage, which will make the game load a new map. Each map is named sector and you start in the desert sector. To conquer it you need to convince mech mines. It's more bribing. You can convince them in 3 ways. Defeat their gliders, then convince them in your inventory, or in a neutral base, or one that is owned by you. Which is the better way because you get a bit of money for bringing the mech mind in, and it still costs the same convincing them. You can also convince them while they have a glider, which is more expensive, but gets your clan a combat ready glider. Or if your control is advanced enough, you can bring them to a base that can auto-convince them and they become part of your faction without you spending a single coin. Insert the convinced mech mines into a facility, so-called a cluster, and it becomes yours. Gen 5 mech mines cannot be extracted except by you. So you can take control of a facility forever as long as you have a Gen 5 in them. The more bases and gliders you have, the more of the sector is owned by you. As soon as you reach 55%, it becomes 100% and the sector is yours. Your mech mines will trade and fight on their own, and even capture facilities for you, although it's faster and easier to do it yourself. The way I usually conquered a sector was killing every free or clan-owned glider and convinced everyone after delivering them to a neutral base. This costs usually less and also increases your career rank. After a while, if you have at least one base with a hangar, your own gliders will be produced. After getting the whole sector, or sometimes midway, I found the Gen 5 of the region and convinced it, or at least received the quest to do so. Then I stayed in the sector for a while, doing quests and getting new gliders. Speaking of which, you can get different gliders: reactors, weapons, engines, armor, shield and special equipment. Each of those, except the special ones, can be modified up to rank 5. This is what you do 90% of the time. There are some open question marks and problems. First, your faction has a relation to other factions, which decides who fights whom in the sector. But there is no clear way to improving the relation. It should be by helping them when they are in a fight, but that is a bit of a problem if they fight primarily your gliders. The relation weakens when you, and not your faction, destroys gliders of that faction. I would have preferred to have more control over this. Not necessarily in a direct way, but I didn't find out a surefire way to improve the relation between my faction and another. You cannot research anything, improve the gliders of your faction, make new facilities or anything. The only thing you can do is convince gliders, set the trader-warrior ratio and the protection and attack ratio, and that is all. I would like to have a training facility in which I can insert mech mines, for example, a way to improve the gliders for my faction, or even just customize my faction beyond just the symbols. What I also noticed while sorting my footage is how much time I spent picking up items. This isn't strictly a bug and more bad game design. You pick up items by gliding over them slowly, but you need to glide right over them, not beside them and not near them, right over them. And the pickup range is ridiculously small, so you often teabag items. Huge part of this game is spent teabagging items. There are still problems and exploits. One exploit is really bad and often done by accident. Whenever you save the game, either by quick save or manual, all gliders reset. You can use this to unstuck gliders, but when they return they stop attacking and are stuck for a few seconds, sometimes even longer. So you maybe want to save before attacking a glider, which most people would do, but then the glider is bugged out and just eats your shots. Rapidly quick saving makes you practically invincible. To sum it up, it's a weird game. It's not bad, just a bit shallow, but the ideas and setting have promise and maybe we see improvements in A.I.M 3. With that I glide out. Farewell.